Piyush ji, for taking, you've been always very generous with your time for these events, and it's become associated with you in many ways. We're also, in a celebratory moment as far as the nation is concerned. We had crossed 100 medals in the Asian Games yesterday. We had a very successful. We had a very successful G20 summit. There's obviously the Chandrayaan mission. So the mood is generally optimistic, but journalists have also been accused of being professional pessimists. So let me introduce a note of realism and ask you, startups. There has been, in the earlier discussions, there was talk of global macro being bad, and concerns about fund flow to the startup sector and indeed to other sectors. The term funding winter has become widespread. So are there any measures which the government has in mind to support the startup sector? India is the third largest in the world after Silicon Valley in China.
Well, journalists of late are accused of a lot of things beyond pessimism. But always a delight to be in this forum. It's something which I think has also become a part of my annual calendar. And this time around was getting a little close with my meetings in UAE. But I'm really delighted to be amongst all of you. Suresh is another permanent feature.
Yes.
So between you, Suresh, me, and some of your other colleagues, and of course Mr. Gangwani, all of us, Satyan, all of us have long association, and I really enjoy coming here. If not for anything else, the energy in your room is very infectious. Gives me a lot of confidence about the future of India. And congratulations to all of you, to all the wonderful startups for the work that you've done. And to those who are going to be recognized for the Startup Awards. I personally am not very concerned about the funding winter. There's always a reality check that is required after every few years. And I look at this period as one of those periods where our startups will come of age. We'll see a little bit of the churn in the industry. We already noticed from the conversation and the last question that was asked that cash flows and profits are becoming relevant finally. And thank God for that. And I think my own experience running a business, I wouldn't call it a startup in the modern sense of the word in terms of innovation or new ideas, but running a small industry at a young age. My experience is whenever you have too much cash or you're flush with cash, you tend to make mistakes, you tend to blow it off. A little tight-fisted environment in which you run your business is always going to be good for business. You'll manage it better, you'll control expenses, you'll be conscious of every bang that you get for the money that you spend. Right. And therefore, I think this little bit of occasional roadblocks will only help our startup ecosystem mature. Having said that, while government has a number of schemes, our fund of funds and credit guarantee scheme, we have also last year through the advisory council, of which I see some members here also, started the mentoring program. We've done the Investor Connect program. So in a small way, we've been trying to look at good opportunities, not missing the bus. But I think there's enough and more money for good ideas. My own meetings in UAE over the last 2 days, I got the impression that they are feeling let down. They're disappointed there's not enough investment opportunity coming out of India. They're looking for big and small opportunities. And of course, I have my age-old grouse against Indian investors and Indian industry, which at the cost of repetition, I will use this platform to see if someday somebody will hear me out. Maybe Vedi, you could hear me out on this. Ever since 2020, if I'm not mistaken, I've been appealing to Indian family offices, Indian industry, Indian business persons to consider setting up a homegrown fund,
Yeah.
which is financed primarily by Indian money, Indian investors, to be able to support the startup ecosystem, particularly at the early stage, where I find that our young boys and girls are missing out most of their ownership, most of the upside, because they have to give up a large part of their ownership at very high cost, very low valuations. They almost land up losing their company.
Right.
So I really think that we need to see Indian industry come up. Maybe some of the unicorns put in a little bit of their income or earnings or values into some such fund as almost as a measure of support to upcoming startups. But the funding winter is more in the mind than in reality. Good projects, good ideas will always have investors. Am I wrong, Prashant? You were here somewhere. Am I wrong when I assume that? Thank you.
So I think you were wearing your other hat. I think most people know that because he holds many portfolios, leader in the House of the Rajya Sabha, but he's also a renowned CA. I think you were the number 2 ranked in the CA exams many years ago. You're also a famous lawyer. So you would actually say that this is not necessarily a bad thing which has happened, the kind of...
Not at all. I clearly feel it's not bad. It'll help businesses look for more serious activity much faster. And while there could be a downside in terms of the adventurism reducing or the ability to take risk or to explore new ideas may sometimes get affected. But I do believe some of it is something we brought upon ourselves because of some of the instances that have come to light in the last, particularly in the last 12 months, have not done our sector a lot of good.
Right. So you've also mentioned this fact before that there isn't enough, enough of a large domestic venture capital industry, which, for example, China has, right? And you refer to it again that. So why do you think that's not happening? What do you think, can the government do anything to incentivize creation of such an industry in a way that, you've used PLI to promote domestic production in a large number of sectors. Can a similar exercise be taken as far as creation of a funding industry of some kind is concerned?
We can do that. It's not impossible. But maybe a good idea if we can look at a partnership between industry and government. Because it's not government's job to be able to assess a good idea or a bad idea. We'll mess it up. I think it's better we let industry do that job. We have the fund. For example, our fund of funds. It had 10,000 crore commitment, 9,500 already committed, but we've only been able to disperse about, I think, 4,000 odd crores amongst 85 AIFs. I would love to see at least that part of the money move out faster into the market. So, and maybe the Investor Connect initiative could be a good beginning or a starting point.
Right.
So let the message go out from your platform that those who are facing a stress on funding must certainly connect with the Investor Connect program, and that'll give us an idea of where, if at all, government intervention is required.
So one of the points which we discussed earlier, one of the programs in here, was that there is a multiplicity of regulators and ministries which impact the startup sector, right? So we passed the data protection bill recently. There's obviously the old IT Act which is there. There is also a Digital India Act which is coming. But, for example, the TRI is involved in various activities which pertain roughly to the startup sector. And then the Minister of Consumer Affairs, of which you also have a fairly robust interface, let's say, with the startup sector. Do you think, many in the startup sector say that it creates a lack of predictability and creates some amount of uncertainty for the sector. So how would you react to that?
I think multiplicity of regulators is a reality in all businesses. And we can't have a separate ecosystem where we say that all startups will only have to adhere to one law.
Sure.
That would become very complicated if you ask me. But yes, if at all anybody in the startup world feels that this is becoming detrimental to their business, we'll be happy that in the next advisory council meeting, we invite startups to come in and give us their suggestions, give us where they feel difficulty in meeting the requirements of the law. But most of the laws you mentioned really don't hurt startups. For example, consumer affairs, which I look after, that's more about making sure the consumers get a fair deal. As long as consumers get a fair deal, they get a choice to be able to make their own decisions. They are not forced to subscribe to any service. We are okay with it. We are not interfering in anybody's business. And we could come out with a small list of do's and don'ts on consumer protection, which can make it easier for startups. Similarly, data protection is all about ensuring that the privacy of data is not affected. I don't think beyond that, data protection laws are hurting anybody.
No, sure.
So I personally have not received any feedback from those whom I keep interacting with that any of the laws are hurting them. If at all, the only thing I've been advised they want more flexibility is things like the employees' stock options and stuff like that. Other than that, if there's any other issue related to the IT industry, we had Rajiv here, very proactive, very supportive of industry. If there's anything to do with consumer affairs, I'm available.
Right.
So please become the bridge between the startups and the government.
Sure. And where are we on the position of marketplaces as distinct from directly selling to consumers? Marketplaces as distinct from directly selling to consumers, which is...
Well, I think there are certain laws of the land. The foreign direct investment laws are very, very clear. They distinguish between the marketplace model and the direct business to consumer model. I wish everybody would just follow the law of the land under which investments have come in. That's all that we are asking. We are not asking them to change anything else. Just stick to the law of the land, which has been consistent all through. Ever since investments started flowing into e-commerce, our laws have been absolutely crystal clear. Those who come in with foreign direct investment are not allowed to participate in the retail space. Those who come in with Indian money are allowed to participate in it as a retail business or like any other mall. Very simple, there's no rocket science in it. You either run a marketplace, which is very, very categorically defined in the FDI law, business to business. All the circumvention that's going on is the one that I hope to be able to convince companies to stop. Okay. Why are you looking at only one direction?
No. Which direction am I looking at?
Now 4 people have started looking at that direction.
Okay, we can take a couple of audience questions. Is there... yeah, okay. Can you please identify yourself? There should be a mic.
Hi, I'm Siddharth Pai. I'm the founding partner of 314 Capital, an early stage VC fund based in Bangalore. So, sir, I would just like to, all of us in Bangalore are very excited to have the startup minister come and visit us, sir. We know that India, Inc. has a Davos, but Startup India will always have ET Startup Awards at Bangalore itself. So, sir, my question actually comes with regard to the funding question that you mentioned. Even though your government's the one that's actually given us Atmanirbhar Bharat as of now, and the Indian startup ecosystem has actually embraced this wholeheartedly. We have Indian entrepreneurs solving Indian ideas from India, and few of them from in India itself. But the one thing that's been distinctly missing in the entire piece has actually been Indian capital, sir. We've actually seen regulation being one of the greatest impediments to institutional Indian capital actually coming in. Silicon Valley VCs used to raise $42 million between 1972 to 1977, but the moment they changed the regulations to allow insurance companies, banks, pension funds, etc., to invest into them, gave them an option, didn't mandate them to, gave them an option the money they started raising yearly grew up to $942 million a year. And in those days, that was actually a large sum of money. But we've seen, even as of now, Mr. Vaidyanathan is here from IDFC First Bank, banks have to take a 150% charge against equity the moment they invest into an AIF or the moment they invest into a loss-making startup. Some of them can't hold instruments unless the instrument pays out a yearly coupon for that matter. Insurance companies are yet unable to invest into AIFs, which actually may have some position overseas, despite their money not actually going outside. Even this funding winter that's happened as of now, it's been exacerbated by the fact that Indian capital, which has been about 5 to 10%, is unable to participate in a meaningful manner. Family offices can't take the place of a large bank, of a large institution actually coming in. So we'd just like to know from on behalf of the ecosystem, what are the steps the government is taking to ensure that larger Indian institutional investors are no longer just a mute spectator, but can actively participate in this entire revolution that's going on as of now?
You know, there's a mindset issue. We've already seen in the past that any losses that occur due to the risks that financial institutions take ultimately fall on the government. And more so because all the insurance companies, all the banks, highly regulated entities, in a way are using public money. They're using public deposits, public money. And I think the public mindset is not yet mature enough to be able to accept greater risk, even if it has the promise of greater reward. I'll give you a simple analogy to help you understand why we, as government, cannot direct the insurance companies or banks to look at greater investments in startups. We have this debate about the old pension scheme and the new pension scheme, which some of you may have read about in the newspapers. The old pension scheme was typically that a government servant retires and is guaranteed a certain level of pension. The new pension scheme is more contemporary, it's contributory with both the employee and the government contributing, and a good portion of that is being put into equity markets, is being put into public investments, so in the expectation that that will give higher returns. All calculations seem to suggest that even as we speak, the money that the employee will get on retirement, basis the current valuations, will be more than one would have got as per the old pension scheme. But we are unable to get a large part of the employees to accept that, understand that. There's the thinking of security, the security of funding, and therefore they are more comfortable with a government bond which gives them a assured return. The risk-reward balancing is still something which it happens as the economy matures, as people start having a better understanding of financial markets. It will happen. But currently, for the government to be able to tell public money custodians to take this fund will be a little difficult, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm being asked to wind this up. I'll request Piyush to stay on stage, and I'll request Suresh Venkat to take this
Thank you,
forward.
friends. Thank you.
From breaking news, detailed analysis, in-depth interviews and explainers, follow the Times of India. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like our videos and hit the bell icon to stay updated with the latest.